Well, hello and welcome back to another chat with me, Matt Webb from Mentor Group. So we're early 2021. You know, a lot of us would have hoped at this stage we would be coming out of the pandemic, we would be moving forward, that 2021 would be getting back to some kind of normal life, whatever that may be. And yet, as we're recording this, we're still very much in the eye of the storm of the pandemic, and many business owners will be thinking about their revenue. They'll be thinking about their plans for this year, thinking about how they can maximize success. So we thought we'd have a bit of a chat about that today. So joining me today for, we don't know whether it's the third or fourth time, but it's been quite a few times, is James Barton, our CTO. James, how are you?
I am very well, and it's great to be back, Matt. Thank you very much.
Good to have you back, my friend. Now, this is a hot topic that we're going to cover today, isn't it? Called revenue operations. So give our listeners and viewers a sense of what we mean by revenue operations.
Yeah, sure. So if we look at traditionally, there was always a bit of a conflict between sales operations and marketing operations and the execution between. And you would have seen this in even inside our own organization, where marketing provide good leads, or they think they do. Salespeople then pick them up and go, oh, that's not a very good lead. And there's a conflict between sales and marketing. So when we're looking at the kind of marketing ops and sales ops, these are the execution elements that are inside those teams. So you can have a marketing strategy and you can have a sales strategy, but you also need the tactical execution in terms of the operations and the tooling around it. Now, what's come out very strongly through last year, and I think is going to be a massive topic for this year and going forwards, is people need to stop talking about sales and they need to stop talking about marketing, but instead start talking about revenue, because ultimately that's what we're here to do. Both marketing and sales are there to generate revenue, and it's when we break down those barriers between those two silos inside an organization and bring them together under one term, which is revenue enablement, revenue ops, whatever you want to call it. It changes the way people think about the function of generating revenue, and we break down all of that conflict and are enabled to think differently, that enable us to be able to really progress and push that revenue forward, which is what every organization needs to be able to do.
So you got many functions, you've got many departments, but let's say you got a sales and a marketing lead. And what we have seen traditionally is there is a silo, whether it's been intentionally done or otherwise. I don't think it's ever done intentionally necessarily, but maybe it's not as interdependent as you would like or you would hope. Both functions have got a goal to move to create revenue for the organization. But give me a sense, what steps do you think would need to be taken to bring those two together under this engine of revenue operations?
Really simply, the first thing is having one goal. So often the goals for marketing don't necessarily fit the goals of sales. So marketing may have a KPI, for example, about producing a number of leads demand, but they don't necessarily fit to what sales want, which is the number of well qualified leads to be able to push through the pipeline. So making sure that our goals are actually aligned. And I think revenue is ultimately what we want now. Often I have seen personally organizations with great marketing ops that produce these leads, and they devolve their responsibility at the point they pass the lead on to sales, and they go, it's no longer my problem. And that, for me, caused an issue. I've also had sales organizations that all they do is blame marketing for poor quality leads, when actually it's their own capability that causes the problem. And it's their own enablement and their own skill set. So we need to break down all of that blame culture, integrate together with one or two sets of KPIs that drive revenue. Once those goals are aligned, we can then work out how to work forwards to get it done right.
Okay, so you've mentioned to me before that you believe that lead generation in the current set of business conditions is more important than it's ever been.
Correct.
Why do you think?
Yeah. So this does talk directly into the pandemic. We have seen even before the pandemic a massive shift towards organizations and people buying engaging with salespeople much later in the sales cycle. So it's about 75% through the sales cycle before they even engage with sales. So think about it from a marketing point of view, we have to be on point and have great messaging all the way through. Rather than just gaining interest, we now need to gain interest, and then we need to drive that interest to the point where they've actually got commitments. They have the information where they can start to make choices. Through the pandemic, the research has shown that that's moved even further along. It's to about 85%, even 90% in some cases, where sales are only getting engaged once the buyer is ready to buy. Nothing, we don't need to do many of the things we used to do, but that changes that whole flow of where we'd normally have a very static sales pipeline. I mean, we all know these sales pipelines: step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. Yeah. And I actually fundamentally believe that whole stepping process is now not fit for purpose, in as much as it's more like a map than it is a set of directions. So if we would want to get someone from gaining interest in this to purchasing, you and I have very different personalities, Matt. As a techie nerd, I'm much more insular. I'm much more introverted. I will want to go and do my own research, and my research will be based upon what's the technology like, for example. Is it fit for purpose? You're a bit more extroverted than me. You want to be able to go and get some demonstrations, etc., and that is two different journeys, if you can see my meaning. And if you think of the classic buyer types, these buyer types, each of them has a different journey, and it's not the same. It's not the same sales process. So we need to start looking in 3 dimensions rather than a linear 2-dimensional flow to get us through that sales cycle, to enable us to be able to make the purchase and get the customer exactly what they need. And we need to be much more clever as salespeople to ensure that the right content is getting to the right person at the right time. And that's critical. It's not just about the right person, it's about the right content at the right time in their buying cycle. Because if you and I see this all the time, you try and engage me in a demo call really early on, I'm going to say no. Well, I want to do some research before I speak to you, so I can ask great questions as part of the demo. But too many organizations, they say, okay, get the interest, get on a demo. And that actually, for me, is going to turn me off. It might work brilliantly for you or for another buyer, but for me, it won't work. So we have to start being much more dynamic with our sales processes, much more dynamic in how we approach the market. And that's where this concept of revenue comes in, because it really is a play between marketing and sales here. Because marketing have to produce, and you could say that inside marketing ops, it's a subset of content ops, which is another piece of providing the right content in marketing. But they all fit together, and it's so siloed currently in most organizations, and that's why it just doesn't work anymore. We have to be starting thinking of revenue rather than sales and marketing.
Right. So the traditional marketing approach is fading away, and marketing need to be more involved at all stages of the sales process in a more dynamic way.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
And working with sales at every step.
Yeah, absolutely. So as a member of the virtual team all the way through.
Mm-hmm, correct.
But let's play out a more extreme version of that. I'm picking on one of the points you talked about a moment ago. So if buyers are 85% of the way through their sales process, mm-hmm. do we even need salespeople?
Well, yes, because the salespeople still need to be able to put that content to the right person at the right time. Okay, so that content. One of the things that I'm a technology lover. We have to be so careful of marketing and sales automation, because marketing and sales automation is fixed again on that linear process that says once you do this, this is what you get to do next. Where sales needs to come in and says, well, you could get that, but actually what's better for this individual is this. So you might have some automation as a baseline that you as a sales guy say, actually that is right, carry on. Or you may say, no, you need to take another track. And that's where we, because we understand people and empathy and understanding, sales brings all of that value. And then of course, at the end of the sales cycle, you've got things like negotiation and creating value, et cetera, et cetera. But also sales guys need to work with marketing to help make sure that it's connected, not to features and advantages, but to real business benefits. And the sales guy often has the finger of the pulse about what that customer's real issue is and what the benefit of the product and contextualization of our offerings, because marketing can do a great job of creating value propositions generically, but what we have to do, and you know this to be true from all of the consultative selling and all the stuff that we do normally, we have to really understand the context for that particular business and or that particular buyer, because it's sometimes the buyer's buying it for a very, very specific reason.
Absolutely.
And we need to make sure we understand, because marketing will come at it from quite a generalist point of view, but that's where we can really contextualize it.
Absolutely. So you have more of a flow between sales and marketing in the early stages. And of course, I know the answer to the question. The key thing from a salesperson's perspective is truly understand your customer. And in 2021, it's more important than ever. But use that information, work with your colleagues in marketing in a revenue operations way to create that content that is specific for the customer, that's going to drive the conversation. Because the key to it all is not getting to the point where the customer is already 85% of the way through. We've got to disrupt their thinking earlier. Correct. So that maybe they've never even thought of it. These are ways that we can help your business thrive and survive in the current climate. So
and Matt, that's where we have to start looking at where we would normally traditionally put ourselves in an organization as sales enablement. We need to think about revenue enablement. How can we have sales and marketing in the same room, having the same conversations about generating revenue? Because what I've seen previously, again, is marketing will have their own enablement programs, sales will have their own enablement programs, and they're just not aligned. Get everyone in the obviously you can't get everyone in the same room these days, but you know what I mean, in the same virtual space, and have programs that are specifically designed to help an organization generate revenue. And whoever's needed to be in the room, that will be marketing and sales. And again, all these other ops as well. There's this conversation at the moment about big ops and the 5 big ops, IT ops, dev ops, marketing ops, finance ops, people ops. There is this whole big ops and converging digital domains is a really interesting piece that's going to play out much more as this decade carries on. Certainly the next 3 or 4 years, you'll see some big changes there, I think. Okay,
so let's wrap this up. Give me your key nugget of advice. If you're an organization, you feel currently you've got a siloed sales and marketing function or functions, where do you start? What's the one thing you do to really start this revenue operations transition, if you will?
I would say the first thing you need to do is work out what is the unit of measurement of success for revenue. Once you can work that out, and then you can align the two organizations of the marketing and sales underneath it. I mean, there's no surprise that there is an increase now in the role of the CRO, the Chief Revenue Officer, because they can sit and oversee everything. I think that you've just got to look at trying to find ways to align marketing and sales more and more to have one goal, and so that everyone is pulling in the same way, because too often they are different things.
Perfect. And I mentioned earlier that we know that we need to understand our customers better in sales. That's not a nice to have now, it's an imperative. You've got to understand your customer. You've got to really look at what's happening within their organization now. Yep. How do you future-proof them for the future? That's what great salespeople do. And if you can bring those two functions together in a cohesive way, then we can start to create content and meaningful conversations that will help our customers. And really, that's the essence of what sales is. We're trying to find ways that through our propositions, we can help our customers succeed. That's what it is. So James, it's been insightful as always. I think maybe we come back to this topic of revenue operations as we go through this year, as we start to learn more about it. And I very much welcome you to come back if you're happy to do so.
Always happy to be with you, Matt.
Appreciate your time again. And everybody who's watching and listening, thank you for taking the time out. Stay safe, and I'll see you soon on another chat with Matt very soon.